We're going to get a crazy Connect joke next.
Yes.
All right, who has questions for this fantastic set of presenters? Microphone behind you, Brian. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, how did you get depth using a single camera? You said you could estimate depth.
The basic version explained to me is essentially if the car is moving, you can artificially create two cameras because you can, with the car moving, you create a second frame. You use those two frames to create a 3D rendering of your scene. And from that, you can actually, and based on your angle, if you calibrate the camera correctly and you know the angle as well as the camera, you can actually determine the distance. It's patented, actually. The distance estimation is technique we implemented. It was patented and actually won the Best Paper Award at the IEEE Computer Vision Conference.
So in that case, does it only work when the vehicle's moving?
No, it actually works if it's stationary, but you don't have distance. But if the car is stationary, you're not worried about that, and the customer wasn't.
That's a good
They
point.
just want to know, oh, well, somebody's walked behind me, but if your car's not moving, you don't care.
Yeah, that's very cool. Next question.
There were lots of data points with respect to performance and memory and things like that. Cost, kind of words like low and medium and reasonable, and I guess we have a little bit of a $35 price point there, but I'm just kind of curious. What are some of the ranges, especially at the lower end, of the cost of these systems? Is $35 ridiculous, or is that, sort of typical for low end? What's the range there?
Low end for what, though?
Well, just for camera systems, if you're trying to do, and I know this may not be a reasonable question, but I mean, if somebody's looking at some vision processing, what do they expect to put into,
Well, we're looking at some very high volume applications, and the price targets for the customers for bill of material are between $15 and $20 for the module, and that includes the sensor, the lens, the plastic, the power supply components, and the vision processing chip. But those are, opportunities which are multi-millions of units, so they, maybe, some companies can get down to that level, to meet those price targets.
Yeah, I think that's really pushing the state of the art. If you look at consumer products today, there's the Connect. The bill of materials is about $60. Of course, that's not exactly fair because the Connect has to plug into something to actually do anything. But also a product I really like, the LiveScribe Smart Pen. We have one at the BDTI demo table. It's a pen with an infrared camera in it, and it tracks the motion of the pen and which page you're on by by gray dot patterns that are detectable by the infrared camera in the nose of the pen. That sells for $100 or $110 retail. So I think, this kind of $50 bill of materials for high volume stuff seems to me to be about where we are in the current generation. And so, $20 to $30.
I'd say that's where it needs to go. Like, we're probably to see vision really, vision or smart vision processing really proliferate in very, very specific things. I mean, these products do specific things. Like, we're in a product that does a smart pen type thing. They're usually very specific on what they want to solve. But it still needs to be programmable, interestingly enough, because the algorithm is modified and changed as you actually get the thing done. And then everybody tries to do something different, and there's no standard out there. So, but it's in that, you're right, it's in that sort of price range right now, or cost range. But, to really proliferate across a whole bunch of these different markets that we're looking at, eventually it's got to get down to that $20 range.
Yeah, and it'll have to run on ambient light as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next question. Behind you, Brian.
That's where the sensor guys come in, right?
Question for Simon. What is the time the life cycle of the product from initial code to production?
Well, it depends. If you're talking about an OEM, sort of before market automotive product, from start to when it goes into production, the customers we're working with are still not in production. The first cars that come out using something similar to this won't be till 2014. But in the aftermarket, it's already going to be out later this year.
So how long will it take for production?
2 years, and for automotive companies, typically 3 to 4 years.
One last question. You said vision processing chip. Did you make your own ASIC?
Yes.
Mario mentioned camera interfaces, and you mentioned the MIPI interface. Is there any real convergence happening on those camera interfaces? I mean, there's camera link, and there's parallel, and there's OBS, and all those things. And is the industry heading somewhere?
I think there's there's no clear, well, I think maybe MIPI, the mobile market, that's a huge market, so they've, like the fact that they're pushing that is, if I'd have to put my money on one, that's probably the one that would come out as the emerging standard,
It's
but there
LVDS.
are others, yeah. It's LVDS based, yeah.
I was wondering on the zinc-based development board. We currently use Xilinx parts, and we need to add in some H.264. And I'm wondering whether that would overpower the zinc to put that in there, or would it, keep my arms busy so I don't have time to do anything else? I don't know if you have a feel for how feasible that would be.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on that one, but Xilinx has third-party companies that do that. So, and they do have people working on that for the zinc part, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to depend on what flavor of H.264,
P1 30 frames per second,
encode or decode.
both but not simultaneous.
Yeah, that's my gut feel. Obviously, your mileage may vary. My gut feel is that's within the capabilities of the dual-core Cortex A9s, but you may not have much left over to do anything else, right? So you may want to offload some of your processing-intensive steps to the FPGA. That's just rough first order. One more question?
So I'm interested in the test database. Now, presumably that was provided by the OEM. And presumably, I guess my question is, in field trials, how robust did you find the database? Did you find there were a lot of corner cases that in field trials were not covered? And when you did that, who owned the IP for the test database at the end of the day?
Well, there's, what the OEMs do, they keep, and we don't have access to that. For the product I was talking about was primarily an aftermarket rear camera. We created the database and we own it.
Okay. And I guess the critical question is, in field trials, what percentage of the test cases that were in the database did you find were covered, and what percentage did you have to create up to new? In other words, how good was that to start?
Geez, that's a question for the testers. I do remember that we added, but I don't know the percentage. Tina, do you?
It's a really excellent question. It really gets to sort of fundamental nature of vision, right? Unlike certain other fields, like let's say wireless communication, where given certain reasonable assumptions, you can analytically derive the optimal solution. This doesn't happen in vision. It's fundamentally an experimental field. So you try stuff, and you try it with the data you have, and then you take it out into the larger world, and it fails.
Actually, we came across, I don't know what the percentage was, but an example of one that we didn't have in our database was when they took the camera to Korea, and in the underground parking lots there, their floors are very shiny, and the fluorescent lights that shine on the floor create a false detection. It looks like an object. So we had to figure out how to get rid of that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of
We added that
iteration,
in
and this also goes to why you almost always have to have programmability, because you're essentially never done with your algorithm. So I think it's an excellent question to end this session on. Please join me in thanking our excellent presenters.